Welcome back to the workbench, everybody. Okay, this is the second one I've done where I decided to do a voiceover instead of relying on the audio I did while I was videoing this series. As I mentioned, my part 3, I sounded like I was drunk, and these two videos were basically done about a few days apart from each other, so I must have been suffering something during that period. Okay, so what I've done here, I've glued the entire thing up. Fuselage put together, the wings are put on, and now, yes, and I've also puttied up all the different bits and pieces to the fuselage. Okay, so underneath the wing here, this section here that I'm pointing out is one piece that snaps into the fuselage. There was a bit of a step underneath here between the two parts, of the two halves of the fuselage. That was part due to the thickness of the plastic of the molding. And if you remember, I think it was part 1, I think I said I was going to reinforce the interior. Yeah, that didn't come out too well. It exaggerated that step even further, so I had to fill it in with Squadron White putty and hit it with Mr. Surface 1000 putty as well, or prime or whatever it is. So that's what you can see there, that white and grey. Because of the step there, I actually had to build up the profile a bit to the fuselage, so I put a dam across where I was pointing just then. A dam wall using Tamiya tape. Just boxed it in and laid down a couple of layers of the surfacer just to create some height there. Because that lip there, every time I put putty down, it broke away, flaked off, something like that. So I did it with the dam wall, sand it down with a metal file, just horizontally across, using the sides of the fuselage there to try and make it a bit true, a bit level. That's the tool I use. So basically scrape filing that across, and then stuck that part down. That acted as a support for the wings and the bottom of the fuselage as well. And once that was down, added a bit more surfacer and Tamiya lacquer thinner was to smooth out the joint between the two pieces, or the fuselage half and that bottom piece. Reason being is that there's a lot of corrugation on this kit. Corrugation is deliberate. That's how the Ju-52s were made, with corrugation on the wings and the fuselage and everything else. So normal sanding processes or puttying practices that we would use, you can't do on this one. You're going to have to use something like the surfacer, or very thin putty that you can wipe away with a cotton bud or a towel or something like that, dipped in either alcohol or spirits, etc. I was using the lacquer thinner, so that made the job just a little bit easier. Then glued on the wings. What I did was I pushed had the aircraft belly down. There was no undercarriage on it, and stuck some of those round dishes that you probably just saw about 30 seconds ago underneath each wing, and used a ruler with a tape wrapped around it and marked up so I can see where each wing is, and made sure that with the fuselage square on the table, that the wings actually had the correct hedral on both sides. Okay, these rear parts, the control surfaces, they were kind of a bit of a pain to put on. There's these little tabs there that I'm pointing out there. Two of them caused me a bit of heartache. One broke off completely, the other one was half broke off. So I actually had to create a replacement connection. Here it is coming in the shot now. It doesn't look too bad, actually. It looks a bit like the others if you don't look too closely. So if you're going to be building this kit, beware of those things. They are very fragile. And also too, it's 3 pieces of sprue holding those control surfaces on, so it's not very strong. You need to be very careful when handling this beast. Okay, the top fuselage there, I just ran some putty along this with the Mr. Surfacer again and cleaned it up with the good old lacquer thinner, and the rear control surfaces as well. The rudder is slightly off center, deliberate, because I just wanted to add a bit more action to the aircraft, because it's just sitting there. Control surfaces are sitting there. There wasn't really much in the way of animation you could do with the control surfaces. Like on a normal aircraft, you'd cut out the slaps and flaps and everything else and reposition. This one, there wasn't much. There was just these little nibs that everything held onto. So yeah, added some animation with the repositioning the rudder. Okay, the undercarriage legs here. They're an interesting beast. Sorry. They're two parts each. So the front part that I'm pointing to goes in the two holes in the wings and that bottom part of the fuselage. In the back part, yes, there was a hole there as well. That's right. But that back leg doesn't have any position markings or anything I could see on the main strut. So you're sitting there guessing, okay, is this where they're supposed to go? Even though the pieces went together beautifully and they looked like they matched, I still have reservations about whether or not the wheels were, or the undercarriage is actually too far angled in one direction. Okay, this is a bit of a flaw I've got in the kit. The top of the fuselage there and the back of the tail surface didn't mate up. There's a bit of a gap. I just got to fix that with putty. Okay, these antennas are a bit of fun. There is a DF loop, I think they call it a DF loop, on the front there, and a stick antenna as well. The DF loop doesn't belong on this one. All the photos show no DF loop there, but the stick antenna is there on the other side. Okay. Other than that, this kit is fairly straightforward. There's not much in the way of detail to add to the exterior. I didn't pour over any plans to see if there was anything different. Nothing visually jumped out at me when I'm looking at photos. Excuse me. So that's basically it for the fuselage. Aside from putting on the clear part and gluing everything, putting the Tamiya tape down to protect the canopy, there's not much left to do at this stage. Okay, the engines. I picked up the engines and went, yes, let's detail the engines a bit. Now, the engines come detailed with some, I think they're con rods or piston rods at the front of the engine. They were molded in as one piece and it didn't look right. Looking at photos, there we go. See the straight parts to the front of the cylinders? They're supposed to be some sort of rods. So they didn't look right. And I decided to put them back on there with some tube or round rod, plastic rod, just to add some detail there, a bit of interest. And I also, it's probably in another video, I think, added some wire to, oh, there we go, that's 0.02 thou rod. So yeah, I just added some wire from some old Cat5 networking cable to the front of each cylinder and fed it over the back. Those plastic pieces I've had there, they're about, what was they? I think it was about a centimetre long. Maybe not, I can't remember now. No, 6 mil long, that's right, they were 6 mil long. And I had 18 per engine to put on. I kind of got cross-eyed putting them on. Maybe my eyesight's playing up me. Okay, there's a front part to the engine as well. That would have sat on top of the front of the engine where that knob was that you saw earlier. But since I raised everything up with those extra pieces of sprue, it's kind of out of place. I used the kit propellers stick in there, make sure everything was lined up, and visually try and align that part with the cylinders, make sure that it was centered in the cylinders as well. Okay, putting on the exhaust pipes at the back. Don't glue them all together at once. After the third one, believe it or not, I figured out what you need to do is you glue one down, because they're actually glued onto the engines by little nubs. There's about 6 nubs, 7 nubs all the way around, and you got to glue them down one by one. Because if you do it all at once, your alignment's going to be out. You're going to come back later on going, oh heck, there's a big step or gap between these 2 pins. Best bet is to glue one down, let it dry for a sec, glue the second one down, and use the flex that you've got in the exhaust, or that part, to reposition it so you don't have as much gap running around. Especially that center engine, you're going to see the back of the engine a lot more than you'll see out of this one here. What we've got here is one of the wing engines, so you're not going to see much detail around the engine. You might see some from the back. It's going to be dark. I've tried to lighten the area and add some detail with some weathering powders. As you see there, you can't really see much, but then again, my light source is to either side of me. Probably not in this video, probably the next one, I also drilled out the exhausts themselves, so there's a bit of depth in there. It doesn't look like a piece of plastic thrown in. And this center, that was the center cowling cover. There's not much to that cowling cover. It's like 2 pieces, but it sits on the center engine. That's one of the kit propellers. Now, this aircraft in the movie never stood still with the engines off. The engines were going in some shape or form, so I can't tell whether or not the propeller was a single blade, a double blade or a triple blade. So I'm going with the kit propeller here, which is a double blade. And here you go. This is the 3rd engine I'm putting together, and I'm gluing all those pieces of plastic down. So what I did is I dabbed a little glue to the center. I then put each one down and basically made sure that the part near the center was glued down. Then moved on to the next part. I left the outsides alone so I could, after I finished the entire lot, come back and glue down the outsides and adjust them freely. It seemed to give me a lot of drying time, this glue. This is Tamiya thin. Is it Tamiya? Yeah, it's Tamiya thin or extra thin glue. So it gave me a bit of working time. So I was able to run around twice gluing these things down. If you glue it all at once, I had a few experiences where they stuck together. The glue seemed to pull the parts together, and I didn't achieve the gaps that I wanted, so I had to pull them off and start again. So yeah, there's not much left to do. There's a few extra parts going on. They'll come off. No, sorry, they'll be put on after the camera has stopped rolling. Okay, so that's part 4 now, and part 5 is in the works somewhere.